we inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Thanks for joining me today. Today and Thursday, I'm going to be sharing with you a live event that we just had at the Patriot Academy campus a few days ago. Now, it's sensitive information in that we are faced with a real challenge in America right now, and I brought together some of the best experts in the world on this, and we were very blunt. And this was a brainstorming, open to questions, but really it was about these experts being able to talk this through. What do you do about Sharia law? That's what we called the event. And the guys I'm going to introduce you to today on At the Core, I think you're really going to enjoy this. You may be familiar. I know you're going to be familiar with Bill Federer, of course, American Minute, incredible historian. I think you're probably familiar with Frank Gaffney, who was Undersecretary of Defense under President Reagan and just an incredible guy and now part of our Patriot Academy team. Chris Dunham runs the Patriot Institute, and he is from India and has warned about Islam for well over a decade. And then you may or may not be familiar with Nisar Hassan. He's the guy that started Legalize Apostasy in the UK. He is here to warn us about what's happening in America based on what he went through in the UK. So you're going to learn all their stories, hear from all of them. This is an event we did live, recorded it live last week, and I'm just going to share it with you here on At the Core. I think you're going to enjoy it. I think you'll learn a lot. But when I say it's a sensitive subject, it's because a lot of people are approaching this issue wrong. And I think you're going to have your eyes opened today and Thursday. It's going to take both programs, my program today and Thursday. Walker, of course, with you tomorrow on Wednesday. But it was recorded as essentially one of my. I do this show called The Tavern. If you're not familiar with that, I do it on Monday nights at 6 o'clock live on Facebook and YouTube and X and all that. And it's called The Tavern because I model it after the Revolutionary period taverns where the people would gather to discuss everything. And so it's basically just the opportunity to get people to come together and talk about the strategies and tactics necessary to preserve freedom. And so this is actually essentially a live episode of The Tavern, but with a massive audience. I say massive, I mean, our chamber, Texas House Chamber mock-up holds about 250 people. And so we were packed out. Anyway, let's jump right in. This is an episode of The Tavern filmed just a few days ago at the Patriot Academy campus with very special guests.
All right, so here we are in a very large tavern, and if there's anybody in the room that wants to donate enough money, we're going to build a tavern right at the front of the property so you can have an actual restaurant that can be open. Anyway, we'll take those checks tonight. Here's what we're going to do. Tonight is a conversation. We don't have all the solutions for this very, very important topic, but we all agree this is the fight that has come to the door. The wolf is not just at the door. The wolf is in the house. And we have some major challenges in this country with people understanding what freedom of religion actually is under the Constitution as the founders designed it. We have some major challenges with the church not waking up and realizing the challenges that are facing us. We have a difficult task ahead, and this is not going to happen overnight. I was thinking the other day about how long it took to even get the proper definition of freedom of religion out of the First Amendment when so many in America 40 years ago, when David Barton first wrote Myth of Separation, most Americans believed separation of church and state was in the Constitution, that's what the First Amendment said. 40 years later, we finally get the Coach Kennedy case, overturning the Lemon decision and finally getting freedom of religion back in this country. 40 years it took. Now, I realize what you're thinking. Many of you in this room, like me, are thinking, well, if it takes 40 years to win this one, I'm going to be looking down from heaven because that's a long time from right now. You know what? If that's the case, and if the Lord tarries, and if that's how long it takes to win, so be it. Duty is ours, results are God's. Amen? So the key for us is to understand the battle, understand the battlefield. That's what tonight's about, is a warning and a wake-up call to recognize what we're up against and to learn from what's happening in Europe and Australia and around the world and not be foolish and naive to think that it would not happen here. So we have gathered a panel of amazing experts, subject matter experts that have lived it, that have taught it, that have been warning about it for decades, and it's our honor to have them here in the tavern and as a part of this tonight. Before I introduce introduce them very quickly and then have the first of them to speak. I want to re-invite you. You can either stick around, or if you live close enough, come back Thursday night. We'll be back in this room. We are very engaged in politics and government and choosing our leaders. And so we're going to have a Kendall County candidate forum and a Gillespie County judge candidate forum here in this room. And it's going to be hosted by our Patriot Academy scholars. Can our Patriot Academy scholars stand up and wave, say howdy? We've got quite a few of them in the room. Y'all thank them for putting this together. They're with us for almost a year right here on campus, getting grounded, learning apologetics from one of the greatest apologists on the planet, Chris Dunham, right here to my right, and also learning speaking skills and life skills and all kinds of great things. So we're super proud of them. But Thursday night, same time, 7 o'clock, if you'd like to come back and be a part of that candidate forum. So I'm going to quickly tell you about 30 seconds about each of these fellas, and then we'll introduce Bill Federer to be our first speaker tonight. Chris Dunham is kind of my co-host tonight in the tavern and my partner in crime here on the campus. He's the dean of our Patriot Institute. Chris and I have been working together for 30 years now in various ways trying to influence the culture. He has always been our most popular speaker at the Patriot Academy programs and decided that he was willing to move down here with his wife and help us really pour into these young people for a year at a time. So we are honored to have Chris. Chris is, and he'll tell a little bit of his story, I'm sure, but he is a legal immigrant that did it the right way and came here with $9 in his pocket. And really appreciates and lives out the American dream, and he's pouring it into these kiddos as well. But he's been warning about Islam for a long time, tried to wake me up about it, and I was one of the ones asleep at the wheel and so busy fighting these other fights that I didn't recognize what was happening. So you're going to enjoy hearing from Chris. Frank Gaffney, I'm so thrilled to have as a part of Patriot Academy now. I learned, give him a hand, absolutely. I was first introduced to Frank almost 30 years ago when I ran for the state legislature, and he was training at one of the Leadership Institute candidate programs I went through. And then in the last 4 or 5 years, we started going on each other's radio programs and just struck up a great friendship. And then when this issue really started hitting home, we said we got to do something together. And Frank, by the way, if you want to be thankful for the fact that we are not subjected to the World Health Organization and what they say a virus is, this man right here is the guy you need to be thanking. He's the one that put together the coalition. He won't take credit for it, and he'll say, oh, Rick, it was all these other people. He's the brainchild of helping make that happen, and that's just one of many, many issues over the years that he has led on. And so he is absolutely the right person to help us build this national security partnership and team up with people from all over the nation, all the different grassroots organizations. So you're going to enjoy hearing from Frank tonight. Now, we have a secret special guest that we couldn't even tell you was coming tonight for his security and for our security, frankly. Nassar Hassan is the one that you've probably seen on television and in interviews in the UK, leading the effort to legalize apostasy. If you haven't heard about that, literally making it okay to denounce a particular faith and leave without being killed for leaving Islam. And he and Frank also struck up a friendship, and I am so thankful that you're here tonight, sir. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And everybody knows Bill Federer. You can't not love Bill Federer. It's like in the Constitution somewhere. And I've been learning from Bill for a long time. In fact, Bill just said to me as we were looking over his book table, and I was grabbing one of these, what every American needs to know about the Quran, which you should go get in the coffee shop as you buy some Patriot Brew coffee. That's your ticket. That's your admission price tonight. Buying Patriot Brew coffee and a copy of this book. And you can also get a DVD that has a ton of his books on it for only $20. Lots of good stuff there. But anyway, he was saying something about, wow, Rick, look at all this stuff you guys have built. And man, I feel like I haven't built anything when I look at what you're building. And I said, Bill, you built this, and I'm now building these kids and these young people and around here. So God bless you, man, for pouring into me all these years, for teaching me and the rest of the country. If you're not following him on American Minute, you should. So let's jump in. And by the way, that's one of, in fact, probably I'll steal Tony Perkins' lines. By the time we finish this panel, Bill will probably have written another book, because he has a new book about every week, and he's written on everything from Santa Claus to the YMCA to it's good stuff too. And he has a gift for making it interesting and fun. He and David Barton, man, that's why our family loves history, is because of these two guys. Just incredible. So anyway, these guys have all come to share with you tonight and for us to just kind of literally have a conversation. I'm going to be asking a lot of questions. Y'all can ask questions. We want to know what to do about Sharia law, and not just Sharia law, but Islam. This is not something we want in our country. And we do not, freedom of religion and the whole idea of, you just got to let everybody do whatever they want. No, that is not true. Even the Supreme Court has said if it subverts the public good, we have a right to say no. We do not want child marriage in this country. We do not want pedophilia in this country. We're not okay with honor killings. We're not okay with being able to beat your wife, and it's okay. All of this stuff is evil and wrong, and we don't want it. Certainly not in Texas, but frankly in the entire United States of America. And so anyway, these guys are going to help us start to think about solutions and what we can now do going back into our community. So y'all, please welcome Bill Federer.
Thank you. And I want to let you know how much I respect Rick and Kara Green and the tremendous work they're doing here at Patriot Academy, impacting the world. So thank you, Rick. Amen. And Nassar and Frank Gaffney is a dear friend. And Krish, it's an honor to meet you. Drive neutral reverse. We've seen Europe go from a Judeo-Christian past to a secular free-sex LGBTQ present, and now it's turning into an Islamic future. So the trans agenda is simply a creative way to cut ties with the Christian past before it's Islamicized in the future. We can't understand what's going on until we zero in on Muhammad. He was the DNA. Muhammad was born in 570 AD. His father dies before he's born. His mother dies when he's 6. Grandfather and guardian dies when he's 8. He's orphaned, taken in by an uncle, Abu Talib, who's a merchant who takes him on camel rides. And he goes to different cities and he hears about the different religions. Goes to Persia, Zoroastrian, where they believe that paradise was filled full of virgins that would fulfill all the guy's desires. He hears it and likes it and includes it in his religion. Zoroastrians believed in jinns or genies, like 1001 Arabian Nights, Aladdin's Lamp, and that got incorporated into Islam. And then he goes to pagan cities. And in Mecca, they had a Kaaba, a square building that housed 360 different pagan gods, and the most popular was Hubal, the moon god. And their calendar began with the first sight of the crescent moon over the desert, and they had a rock they thought had fallen from the moon. It's a glass impact rock where a meteor hit the hot desert sands, melted into brown glass, and these pagans would kiss this rock, walk around this rock, bow to it for centuries pre-Muhammad, and Muhammad incorporated that into his belief system. He incorporated some of the Sabaean beliefs, like where Yemen is today, where they chop off hands and so forth. And then there's the Christian faith. And even Encyclopedia Britannica says the gospel was made known to Muhammad through apocryphal and heretical sources. So Muhammad thought the Trinity was the Father, Mary, and Jesus. Nobody explained to him the Holy Spirit. And apocryphal, what's that? The infancy gospel of Thomas, written several centuries after Jesus by someone who knew nothing of Jewish life. It's filled full of so many errors that no scholar takes it serious. But the stories were floating around the desert. Little Harry Potter type stories where Jesus made clay birds and clapped and they flew away, raised a playmate from the dead. Muhammad heard those, and now those are incorporated into Islam as fact. And then there's the Jewish faith. He originally had his followers bowing toward Jerusalem, but when the Jews rejected him, he turned the direction toward Mecca. So he is born in 570 AD, and when he is 25 years old, he marries a wealthy widow named Khadijah. She's 40 years old, widowed twice, and now he doesn't have to work, and so he goes out to the cave and prays. So a movement was sweeping through Christianity at the time called monasticism, where if you really become a Christian, you should give away your money and live in a cave as a hermit or join a monastery. And so they were called desert fathers. And so Muhammad goes to a cave, and a spirit appears to him and commands him to read. He said, I cannot read. Spirit squeezed him a second time, commanded him to read. He said he could not. Happened a third time. And then it sat on him, and then Muhammad began to recite. This is according to the hadith. And that's how he gets these verses, and he repeats them till he has them memorized, teaches them to his followers. The word Quran means recitation. It's an oral thing because Muhammad and his original followers were illiterate. And so he goes back to his wife, Khadijah, and tells her that he thinks he's demon-possessed. And she decides to test the spirit by having him sit, according to Ibn Ishaq, on her left thigh and says, can you see the visitant? He goes, yes, over there. Has him sit on her right thigh. Can you see him? Yes, over there. And then she has him sit on her lap and reveals her form and takes off her veils and says, can you see the spirit? He said, no. And she says, well, it must have been from God because it was embarrassed to look upon me without all my veils on. That was the test that Muhammad used to decide whether the spirit appearing to him was from God or not. And so she takes Muhammad to her cousin, who's an Ebionite Christian priest. Ebionism was this heretical sect that said Jesus was less than God. And he says, maybe that spirit appearing to you is the one that appeared to Moses. And then he dies and Muhammad's left with his spirit. And so he goes into Mecca and he feels there's something in his faith for everyone.
All right, we're going to have to interrupt. Just take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. We're going to jump right back into this live presentation with special guests on what to do about Sharia law.
He feels there's something in his faith for everyone, for the Jews, for the pagans, for the Christians, and nobody's excited about it. And so he gets confrontational, and they chase him out of town. First in 619 AD, it's his year of sorrows because Khadijah dies. He tries going to a city called Al-Taif. They don't want him. They pelt him with rocks and stones. So in 622 AD, he goes north to Medina. It's a Jewish-controlled city. 3 Jewish clans control the city. They're nice. They let Muhammad in as the first ever Muslim immigrant. And he goes into the minority neighborhoods, and he begins to get a following, sort of like a community organizer. And as the following grows, he begins to get involved in politics and begins to get a little pushy, and he pushes the 3 Jewish tribes, the clans, to accommodate him and his followers with a treaty. And so now Muhammad is a political leader in addition to being a religious leader. And then Muhammad's followers back in Mecca, they get confrontational. They get chased out of town, about 70 of them. Now you have lots of Muslim immigrants coming into Medina. And Muhammad allows them to rob the caravans headed to Mecca in retaliation for the Meccans chasing them out of town. This victimhood thing. We're the victims. They were intolerant of us, so we get to rob their caravans. Little different than Jesus, who said, if they take your coat, give them your shirt. So Muhammad gets verses from his Allah that he gets a 1/5 of the booty from robbing caravans. One of the verses says, Allah has given you the slave girls as your booty. He tells his men they can have 4 wives plus as many extra women as their right hand possesses. Bond women, slave wives, concubines, they just don't have the status of a wife. And so the Meccans in 624 AD send 1,000 soldiers to protect their caravan. Muhammad at the Battle of Badr defeats them with only 300. He takes this victory as confirmation that Allah wants him to be a military leader. And he fights in 66 battles and raids in the next 8 years before he dies, killing an estimated 3,000 people. So in 627 AD, the Meccans send 10,000 soldiers to Medina. And the Battle of the Trench, Muhammad digs trenches all around the city, which renders the cavalry of the Meccans useless. You can't charge your horse across a field full of trenches. They'll break their legs. So he goes to some of the Meccans at night, bribes them, they slip away. Goes to some of the other Meccans at night, threatens them, they slip away. And then it gets freezing cold for a week, and the rest of the Meccans go home. And he takes this as a great victory, so he goes back into the city of Medina. And remember those 3 Jewish clans that let him in 5 years earlier? He plays off their politics, and he picks on the smallest that the other 2 doesn't like. And he confiscates their property, chases them out of town. And the other 2 tribes, well, we never really liked that tribe. And now it's got 2 Jewish clans. And he picks on the smaller of the 2. And the big one says, well, as long as you're not picking on me, right? And he chases them out of town. Now there's only 1 Jewish clan. And according to the hadith, Muhammad is taking a bath, and a spirit appears to him and says, how can you rest when all his enemies are in your midst? He said, where? It points at that last Jewish neighborhood. He surrounds them for 28 days. When they surrender, he brings them into the market, chops off the head of 600 or 700 men, sells the women and children into slavery. So within 5 years of Muhammad coming into the Jewish city of Medina as an immigrant, there is not a Jew left in the city of Medina. They were chased out, killed, or enslaved. So it's a 3-step process. Immigrate, increase, eliminate. Immigrate into a host country as a religious refugee, go into the minority neighborhoods and begin to organize a following and get involved in politics. And then you have random outbreaks of violence, rapes, knives, acid attacks, and the previous inhabitants of the neighborhood no longer feel safe and move out, and you take over the neighborhood. And you do it again and again and again till you take over the whole country. So it's RPM. There's freedom for all religions in America. But Islam is not just a religion, because Muhammad was not just a religious leader. He was also a political and a military leader. And so when Mondami last week said, my religion started with immigration. Muhammad went as an immigrant into Medina. And he didn't finish the sentence that within 5 years there wasn't a Jew left in Medina. So in nature, you have domestic species and you have invasive species. You got ants and you got fire ants. You got Kentucky bluegrass and Texas sticker grass. And so ideologically, you have domestic ideologies, Christianity, love your neighbor, bless them that curse you, and you have invasive ideologies. And so I could continue the timeline, but if you want, I can quit.
We'll come back. We'll come back to you. And I just want it to be known, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, that it was right here at Patriot Academy where Bill Federer referred to the slave girls as booty. I'm just saying. All right. We're going to switch you two. Not switch you. We're going to switch your chairs. Hang on. Let me see. Because Frank and I are height challenged. And the other three of you are not. So Frank and I get the tall chairs, and it'll look better on camera. No, you're still over here, Nassar. Okay. There you go. Okay. That's just because you and I are under 6 feet, and they're all over 6 feet. There we go. Does that look better for your camera shot, Landon? Okay. Sometimes we're serious, sometimes we're not. I have to break up the seriousness of a topic where we're, literally talking about an invasion in our country. What I didn't tell you about Frank, and we discovered this in that room over there in the coffee shop when we were sitting around talking with all the scholars a couple of months ago, and he's talking about, it was the day that Trump was with Xi Jinping, and he's saying, this could be like Reykjavik. This could be, his moment, just like Reagan with Gorbachev, and he's describing the moment and describing what happened. And I was like, Frank, you're saying that like you were there. And Frank, in his typical humble fashion, well, yeah, I was in the room. He was in the room at Reykjavik. I mean, come on. This guy has some incredible history. By the way, they're making a movie about that in the fall. It's going to be incredible. So we are thrilled to have Frank on our team. By the way, so many people in this country have benefited from his advice and his planning and his strategy when it comes to the security policy of this country. Congressmen that listen to him and get advice from him and so many others. We're just really, really blessed to have him. So y'all, Frank Gaffney.
Thank you. Bill Federer is one of the harder acts to follow, so just grade me on the curve, as they say. I technically wasn't in the room, but I was in Reykjavik when it was happening.
Yes.
I want to talk about this sort of cardinal problem, as I see it. As we talk about this, Bill described Islam as a religion, but also something that was obviously brought to us by this political warrior figure. I want to focus in on Sharia. I know Nisar will as well from his perspective, and I'm so glad he's here to share that with you. From my perspective, as a national security-minded guy, Sharia is not a religion. It is a totalitarian, toxic, demonic political ideology with a patina, to be sure, of religiosity to it, but basically it is about power. How you get it, what you do with it when you have it, how you keep other people from taking it away from you, and ultimately how you will use it to rule the world. And if we think that anything else is going on but that, this focused effort to conquer, to force everyone to do what the word Islam means, which is submit, then we are deceived and we are doomed. And so what I want to talk to you about very quickly is just a little bit about what Sharia is, and then probably out of order in the great scheme of things, I'm going to share with you some ideas about what we do about it in Texas right now with your help. Okay. So if Sharia is not a religion, and interestingly enough, one of our colleagues, John Guandolo, and others that he has trained, frequently will, at this point in the conversation, pull out a textbook that is used to teach 7th graders in Islamic schools in the United States of America. Its title is All About Islam. And literally, the first sentence of this textbook, which is authoritative. I mean, they use it to teach their kids, among other things, about jihad. And that first sentence is, Islam is not a religion. In the intelligence business, this is what is called a clue. And unfortunately, the next sentence is, it is a complete way of life, which is where you get to Sharia, which is the Arabic word for the path, the way you are supposed to proceed in your life, right? And that path takes you inexorably to seeking to impose your program on everybody else. And Bill has just given us a shorthand of how you do it incrementally. You know that old line about the frog getting boiled incrementally, right? Well, this is in practice. Sharia is just keep turning up the heat until the frog is dinner. What I'm trying to really convey to you as much as anything is if you focus on that fundamental precept, everything else gets a lot easier. If you're distracted by, the Quranic verse that says there is no compulsion in religion, for example, you're off on a wild goose chase. And there are any number of those early verses, which Bill didn't say, but the real importance of that personal life trajectory is that the early verses, the revelations he got when his wife was sitting on him or something, were generally peaceable and tolerant when he was more or less powerless in Mecca. But then there's that whole other part of the Quran, the revelations from when he went to Medina. And I personally believe that, I don't know if you agree with this, but I personally believe that Sharia was devised to try to make sense out of the fact that the first part of the book was all about peaceful, loving your Christian and Jewish people of the book and all that, no compulsion in religion. And the back end of it was all about jihad. And what they came up with that is central to Sharia is that what came after replaced what came before. Allah gave you information that was better when you were ready for it, and abrogation is what happens to all that peaceful stuff. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, when you are focused on Sharia, you are going to understand that the people who adhere to it, the people who espouse it, the people who seek to advance it in nations like ours especially, have one thing in mind, and that is the stuff that was at the back of the book. The verses about jihad, literally the last ones, I think, are about jihad and interfaith relations. And they are as virulently, aggressively, demonically about conquest as anything you've ever read. Which brings us to Texas. As you may have noticed, we're now probably in at least the second, if not the third phase of that life trajectory of Muhammad, the perfect man, by the way. And I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk about this in the course of the program because, you just can't really believe what the perfect man for these jihadis did in his life. I mean, you got pretty much the sugar-coated version from Bill, but I know he can tune it up. But the point is...
That's because it's so unfair to give Bill Federer 8 minutes. He has prepositional phrases longer than 8 minutes.
He does.
And
but he uses them to great effect. And I'm going to conclude by asking those slides to come up just to give you a flavor of what we have to do about it, because the people in Texas are in the front lines, and when I say they, I mean you, are in the front lines of the fight to save our country. We're going to go through just a couple of ideas that we're working on in a campaign we modestly call To Save Texas and Save America. And it's essentially 4 phases, and I'm just going to go through them very quickly. We'll talk about them in the course of the program. This is what I've basically just covered with you. Let me just hasten to say, not all Muslims embrace Sharia. The authorities of the faith do, and God only knows how many millions of others do. But the folks who do have a word for those who don't. They call them apostates. And as you're about to hear from my friend Nassar, that's a very hazardous thing to be under Sharia. Next slide. So here's 4 phases of a planned campaign to save Texas and save America. It starts with doing next what has already, praise be to God, and to my utter astonishment, by your governor. Who'da thunk? Now, I'm not sure I entirely believe that he's all in, but let's just say that he's done more of this, calibrating on the nature of the problem and talking about doing something about it than I think just about anybody else in public life. With the possible exception of the guys who were holding a hearing today, including your own Chip Roy, in the United States House of Representatives. And I didn't see it myself, but maybe we can talk a little bit about it if anybody else did.
In fact, I didn't realize until I was doing my show this afternoon and I just pulling up headlines, and I saw Chip and that hearing, and I was like, what perfect timing that we're having our event tonight, but I didn't get a chance to watch it.
In the Constitution Subcommittee of the House Judiciary Committee, which he chairs, he was having a hearing about Sharia with some of the best people working with us, by the way, right here in Texas. So let's get Greg Abbott to do the next step. Beyond designation, there's enforcement of what he has said.
All right, we're going to have to interrupt. Just take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. We're going to jump right back into this live presentation with special guests on what to do about Sharia law.
Of what he has said is the case, and he's absolutely right about it. The Muslim Brotherhood and one of its front organizations, the Council on American Islamic Relations, better known as CAIR, are international terrorist organizations. And for good measure, transnational criminal organizations to boot. Treat them like that. Don't let them be holding press conferences in City Hall in Austin and raising an Islamic flag over the City Hall of Houston. I mean, come on. Anyway, good first steps need to be followed up. Next slide. Phase 2. How many people know that on March 3rd, the Republican primary ballot has 5 words that could make a monumental difference in the trajectory of this state and country? The 5 words are: Texas should prohibit Sharia law. Praise God. Imagine getting that on a ballot, let alone giving you a chance to vote for it. And I'm saying you because it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or something else. As you know, Governor Abbott wants everybody to vote in Republican primaries, so there will be other people who will be voting. And they may not be voting the way we think they should. So it is imperative that everybody who is going to vote the way we think they should, I hope especially by the end of our program tonight.
And by the way, that's Prop 10. So that's number 10. It'll be the last thing on your ballot. Make sure you go all the way down.
You got to work all the way through it. 5 words. Next slide. We're going to try to make this vote a turning point in this state and in this country. And I'll explain in the next 2 slides just exactly how that is. But I just want you to have as a minimum takeaway from this that every single person seeking your vote for any office in this state or elsewhere is asked, at least by you, at least once, where are you on Sharia? We need to know. Now, I'm guessing some of them are going to shilly-shally about it. I don't think many will say, oh, I'm for bringing Sharia here. At least not to you. But we need to know where they stand. Dog catcher on up. Some of the things that we're working on with this campaign, and we'll talk more about it, I'm sure, is to help you do that. Next slide.
By the way, scholars, while they're switching the slide, you guys need to ask these candidates on Thursday night, even though they're local candidates.
Yep.
Ask them about where they stand, just like Frank just did.
Yes, we need to know. So if we can create the kind of momentum that we need, and how many of you watch Steve Bannon's shows? Anybody here? Okay, well, Steve is, as you may know, has moved to Texas for this month, as have I and my wife Marisol, who's here somewhere, to try to see what we can do to make sure that we absolutely crush this vote on March 3rd. And by the way, this voting starts on February 17th, as you probably know. So get out there early and often, as they say. I'm just kidding, not often. But early.
Frank, this is the Republican primary.
Yes, this is the Republican primary.
We don't do that in the Republican
What was I thinking?
primary, yeah.
We need this to become a voting issue in a similar way in every race in this country, in every jurisdiction in this country. And it can start right here in Texas. If you will form up and make this just an unbelievable blowout, you can bet every political antenna in the nation is going to be resonating to the fact that it is, and it isn't just in Texas, it's going to be a lot of other places. And it must be, ladies and gentlemen, because what you're facing here is being increasingly faced everywhere. And that's the plan. But taking Texas out is critical to their plan. So we want this to become, as I say, something that defines people and defines the future of those politicians, because in the next slide, mention was made of my former boss, Ronald Reagan. A few of you look like you may have witnessed this as I did. In 1980, Ronald Reagan sought a mandate from the American people to put the last totalitarian ideology that sought the destruction of this nation and Western civilization on the ash heap of history. It's called the Soviet Union. And I had a small role in helping him do just that, because he took that mandate and he operationalized it. We need to do that now with respect to our time's existential threat to freedom. And you didn't have it in this video, but I'm going to urge you to amend it, because on a few occasions, not every time he said that, he often talked, Reagan did, about every generation having to contend with an existential threat to freedom. Because he said, quite rightly, it isn't passed on through the bloodstream to successive generations that they will be free. It has to be fought for. It has to be protected and then turned over to them to do the same. But the thing that he said that always resonates with me, sometimes, and I hope it will resonate with you tonight. He said, if we don't do that, we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was like to live in the United States when men were free. I'm not going there. Are you? God bless you. Thank you.
Amen. Frank Gaffney, folks. Part of the reason we're doing this tonight, and that quote from Reagan was from his inaugural address in '67 as his first term as governor in California. So think about it. First speech that he gives as a public servant elected at that time by the people of California. Then the last speech that he gives as a public servant elected by the nation as president, his farewell address in January of '89. That's when he says, if we forget what we did, we won't know who we are. He said, I'm warning of an eradication of the American memory that will lead to an erosion of the American spirit. And that's exactly what happened. We stopped teaching history, we stopped listening to guys like Bill, and we stopped understanding who we really are as a people, and we lost our American memory, and that lost then our American patriotism. That's why we're called Patriot Academy, is to restore that, is to bring back that memory and restore that patriotism. And he finished that quote by saying, what we need is more civic ritual. Tonight is civic ritual. We're literally teaching civics and how to apply it in this way. You want to introduce Nassar?
I do. I've only just met him this past week or so. We communicated by phone previously, I think on one occasion. But it's been a just absolutely spectacular event in my life to get to know this man. He's going to tell you about his story. He's been telling Steve Bannon about it in a serialized version, and I guess he's going to be back on tomorrow to do more of it. And partly because it's so compelling. This is the story of what it is like to try to leave Islam. Nisar Hussain is a man who was very nearly beaten to death for that crime. Because under Sharia, it is a capital offense. And any Muslim can execute it with impunity. In fact, we'll be honored for doing it. Why this matters to us, ladies and gentlemen, is because if you ultimately are enslaved by Sharia, which is what they have in mind, you're not going to be able to leave it either. So I present to you Nasir Hussain.
God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Good evening. Neil, just stop there a second. I want to introduce you as well. Very quickly, so my name is Nisar Hussain, and it's honestly such a great honor and privilege to me to be here amongst you amazing people. But so Neil Petrie is ex-retired major. We are co-founders of the Legalized Apostasy campaign. And we hope in due course to take 11 murderous Islamic nations who mandate the killing of those like me. Actually, it's in their constitution. Saudi Arabia, Brunei, Mauritania, Afghanistan, and so forth and so forth. And so I really want you to give it up for Neil. He's worked tremendously hard. And actually, so we're going to see some great results, and we're going to shine a laser focus on these countries, and get the world to reveal that they are killing ex-Muslims. Thank you very much, Neil. Thank you. Yeah. And please feel free to go and talk to him. He has a wealth of knowledge, and he's such an amazing guy. And he stuck it with me when I was escorted out from my home by armed police in a SWAT-style operation after fighting these Pakistani barbarians. So just to give you a quick overview, so I'm born and raised in 1965, so I'm 61 this year, to Pakistani Kashmiri parents, born and raised in Birmingham, which is the second largest city. That's almost now going towards 50%. I think in the next 5 years, 10 years or so, it's going to be 50% of the population is going to be Pakistani Muslim or various other Muslim groups. Okay, so By the way, Bill, thank you so much for that overview. You encapsulated very well, and I don't have to do so much work now. And thank you, Frank, as well. I also want to thank Didi Lawrenson of Save the Christian organization, who... I always get a bit tongue twisted. I'm still suffering jet lag, so if I stumble and stutter, please forgive me, won't you? We're 6 hours time difference. So, and Didi actually contacted myself. It was through Set My People Free organization. Kamal Femi actually work raising the apostasy/blasphemy scenario, actually based in Sweden. So I've known them for some years. I've gone over and I've helped them do all sorts of exhibitions and such like. And it was Kamal's daughter, Holder, that contacted Didi. And she's pulled me out of 9 years of... We're living off track. Once the armed police came, 10 of them, they said, look, we can't leave you out of our sight because of this imminent threat to your life. This is England. I could never imagine in my wildest dreams, born and raised, taking on Britishness, growing up as British, that I, my wife, and my 6 amazing children, 4 daughters, would be subjugated under Sharia law. But this is what's happened over the last 30 years. England is a failed state. I was interviewed by GB News just a few days ago, and I told them, you are a failed state. Europe has fallen. 50 million of various Muslim groups ranting and railing, wanting Sharia. Just recently, Germany has banned a Muslim interactive party where hordes of them are rampaging through Berlin, screaming and shouting for Sharia. This is the extent of what is going on. In England, add to that hundreds coming by the boatloads from Calais, from France, 22 miles or so over the sea, into Dover, 4-star hotels, choice of 2 phones, £50 a week for expenditure. They are raping and pillaging. And talking of rape, 250,000, it is estimated, it could be 1 million, working class white English girls have been systematically raped over the last 30 years. Please don't take my word for it. By all means, go to Google, look it up. The police, just like in our case, turned a blind eye. Why? They didn't want to offend Muslim sensibilities. This is what it's come to, okay? And so it is a crisis. Please, 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 and I've come along to say, a small voice, America, wake up. I actually thought you probably I was being generous, I thought you maybe be about 5 years behind. But talking to people from Washington...
All right, folks, we are out of time for today. I will pick right back up with what to do about Sharia law, filmed and recorded at the Patriot Academy campus just a few days ago. We will pick up with this on Thursday on At the Court. Tomorrow, Walker's with you. I'll be back with you on Thursday, and Walker will finish out the week on Friday. Thanks for listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.